So in addition to being able to check email, watch videos, play solitaire, you can now communicate with satellites on the iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Pro, and it blows my mind. I mean, think about it. This little chunk of metal, glass, and plastic, and whatever it's made out of, can talk to satellites 876 miles off of the surface of the Earth that are traveling about 16,000 miles an hour. It's truly amazing. But is it better than the inReach? And that's what we'll answer in this video. I've been using this in the backcountry for about a month now. I've been using the inReach for years now. I have a pretty good handle on how they both work in the backcountry. I'll share that information with you. I'll show you how the iPhone works with the satellite functionality. We'll compare it to the inReach so you can kind of get an idea of what you get with each or what you don't get with each. And then I'll make some recommendations on which one is for you. Should you get an inReach? Should you just upgrade to the iPhone 14 or use an iPhone 14? Or is there a third option that maybe kind of gives you the best of both worlds without a subscription fee? I'll talk about that as well. Before I dive in, I just want to let you know that this is not sponsored in any way. I'm not sponsored or promoted by Garmin. There's no free testers or anything like that going on. This is entirely user supported, so thank you for everyone who supports this channel. If you want to support it, you can do it simply as clicking that little thumbs up button or using my links under the video to buy anything on Amazon. I get a little commission. You don't pay anything extra. So thank you for everyone who supports this channel. Any questions, leave them under the YouTube video. I'll do my best to answer, but otherwise, let's dive in. Now, one of the things that's great about the iPhone SOS is you don't need to overthink it. You don't need to worry about whether you're in satellite range or not in satellite range. You just simply dial 911 or whatever it is in your country. If you're in the UK, I think it's 999. Wherever you have the coverage, you just dial the national emergency number, and the phone will figure out how to get you connected with emergency personnel. So if you have a cell phone signal, it's pretty easy, right? You just get connected through on your carrier to 911. Now, if you don't have signal on your carrier, you might still have a signal on another carrier. And in a lot of places, including here in the United States, they have a reciprocal agreement where other carriers will carry 911 calls through. So if I have T-Mobile, I don't have any T-Mobile signal here, but I do have AT&T. AT&T will patch that 911 call through to a call center. It's all real easy to do. If you look at the top of the phone, if you ever lose your signal and you just see that SOS there, that means you can dial SOS. You don't have your own cell phone signal, so you can't make regular calls or check data, but you can call 911. So that's what that SOS means. All very simple. Now, one other thing I just want to interject here. If you don't have an iPhone 14, you can still use this reciprocal 911 functionality. It'll work on any cell phone. If you want to conserve your battery, if you're out of cell phone signal range, turn it into airplane mode when you're not using it or you're not calling 911. If you don't have your phone in airplane mode, the battery will drain down very quickly looking for cellular signal. So still some options even if you don't have the iPhone 14. Now, a couple of other things that the iPhone has going for it. You can use this with car crash detection. You can use a satellite SOS with car crash detection. And that actually happens here locally. A couple weeks ago in Angeles National Forest, somebody drove the car off the side of a cliff, and the iPhone did a crash detection and actually used the satellite service to dial 911. So it works, very cool. You can also use it with the Apple Watch if you have fall detection. So if you're on a mountain bike or whatever, if you fall, the watch detects that you fall. After about a minute, if it detects a fall, it will call using your phone's emergency SOS. The Apple Watch doesn't have satellite communications, but it is connected to the phone. We'll use it. So those are two instances where this works better than the inReach, right? This automatic detection of an incident or something like that. The other thing is you can trigger it with your buttons. So all you have to do is hold these two buttons in for 5 seconds, and it will bring up the emergency contact screen. So you don't actually need the touchscreen to use the SOS for satellite. You can use it with buttons only. So again, another powerful feature, especially if the phone is cracked or maybe you can't see or whatever the case is, you don't need the touchscreen to initiate an emergency SOS call via satellite. All right, so let's say we don't have a cell connection, there's no carriers. What you will see in the upper corner is this little icon with a satellite, and that lets you know that you are out of cell phone range, but you can use the emergency SOS service. And when you don't have it, the screen will basically say, do you want to try using a satellite? You simply say yes. At that point, a few things happen, and one of the cool things that Apple did is they allowed you to test this in the app. If you go into the settings, you can try a demo of the SOS system. It'll basically transmit the SOS signal to a satellite. You don't do the whole back and forth. You're not actually talking to somebody after that. It's just a bot. But it definitely gives you a good idea of what it's like, and it also gives you an opportunity to test how to work it so you can practice beforehand. And again, very thoughtful, and I applaud Apple for doing that. Okay, so you hit SOS, you hit SOS via satellite. Here's what happens. First, it asks you a series of questions. I appreciate that the questions are simple, the text is big, the buttons are big, the UX and UI of this whole process is very simple. Apple worked with 911 call centers, emergency responders to craft these questions to make them the most useful to basically get the information that's most important to the emergency responders to them. So it takes those questions. It also takes information from your medical ID, which you set up beforehand in the Apple Health app. If you have any allergies or medical conditions, that will be sent along with your message. Same thing with your emergency contacts. You can set those up in the Apple Health app. Emergency contacts will get a copy of everything that's going on. They won't be able to actually text you or interact with you, but they will know what you said happened. They'll get basically a little transcript of the communication with the emergency center that you sent. They'll also get your location, and it will be an ongoing process, so they'll know what's happening. They can call themselves, they can call 911 or whatever to kind of get involved in the process if they want to lend some information. So another powerful thing, it'll take your location, your latitude, your longitude, your elevation, and then it will also take your battery level on your phone so that first responders know how long you have approximately to communicate using satellite. I've heard that the satellite transmitting on this burns as much as watching a video, which is probably the most intensive thing you can do on a phone, any phone for that matter. But that's how much battery it burns, but they will get that battery information as well. Apple takes all of that and compresses it down with a new compression algorithm so that when it gets sent to the satellite, it's as small as possible. It goes as quickly as possible. All right, so the message is all packaged up, ready to go to the satellite. Let's take a step back and talk about the satellite. Apple uses the Globalstar Satellite Network. Globalstar is simply a company that's licensed to launch and operate satellites, just like Iridium, which is what the inReach uses. Apple invested, I think, $450 million, that ballpark, into new satellites to be launched by Globalstar. There's 26 satellites up there now. They've committed to spend even more money on Globalstar satellites. Wouldn't be surprised if Apple acquired Globalstar at some point. Now, if you're familiar with Spot satellite communicators, they also use Globalstar, and they were cool in the way back in the beginning of the satellite communicator days. In recent years, they've got a bad reputation of not being reliable. If you're wondering whether the Apple iPhone was not reliable because the Spots were not reliable, apples and oranges, I'll show you in a second. The iPhone 14 works much better than Spot does, but Globalstar is what it uses. These satellites are flying around the Earth in a predetermined orbit. The phone and Apple and Globalstar, they know where the satellites are going to be every minute, and that information gets synced onto your phone. So when the phone needs to send a satellite message, it says, "Where am I?" It uses the onboard GPS to do that. It uses the gyroscope and motion sensors in the phone to know where the phone is pointed. And if there's a satellite, or if there's not a satellite overhead, it'll tell you to wait a few minutes because it knows one's going to be coming. If there is one, it'll tell you exactly where to point the phone, what direction to point the phone in order to essentially point the antenna directly at the satellite and get the optimal signal. And it works great. Keep the satellite in the middle, and you get a little progress bar, and it shows the message sending. And it's great to have that feedback that you know something is actually happening on the phone. Contrast that to the inReach. You get a little icon in the inReach after you sent. There's like a little up icon that says it's sending, and that's all you really know about it. And I think in the future, if Garmin wanted to do something kind of clever, they would basically copy what Apple does and allow you to point the device at the satellite to get that feedback that you are sending it. Think about an emergency situation where time is critical. Maybe it's, a forest fire or some kind of weather thing or a medical emergency. Getting the feedback that you're pointing it at the satellite and you're sending the message or sending and receiving a message in the quickest possible way, I think is a very helpful thing. I applaud Apple for doing it that way. And again, I wish inReach would do that. Maybe they will in the future, but I think that's very helpful. inReach, just so you know, has it's called a quad helix antenna in here. As long as it's pointing up, it'll work. Now, let's talk about performance. I was using these. I've probably used this maybe close to 50 times in the backcountry in all different types of conditions. I'd say for 90% of that experience, whether I'm under trees like this or out in the open, messages go through in about 20 seconds to 40 seconds, which is incredible. Again, you're sending this to a satellite almost 1,000 feet off the Earth going 16,000 miles an hour, and you're sending a message in 20 seconds. Blows my mind. So very, very cool. Occasionally it would go up to 5 minutes, but that was the exception as opposed to the rule. Contrast that with the inReach. The inReach sometimes would go up in a couple minutes, but in general, I'd say 5 minutes is probably the sweet spot of a message going through. And again, it varies. I've been on top of Half Dome and clear blue skies, and I've had messages fail, completely fail, not able to send. So there are a lot of factors involved, right? Atmospheric conditions, whether the satellites are operational, whatever it might be. But overall, I found the Apple iPhone to work much better. I even did this in a really steep canyon. If you look at the 3D map here, really steep canyon in Red Rocks outside of Las Vegas, and I didn't think anything would work here. I didn't think the iPhone would work. I thought the inReach would struggle. The iPhone went through relatively quickly. inReach took about 5 minutes. I'm surprised either of them worked, but really, really promising in terms of reception. And I'm really surprised that the iPhone works so well. I think it's really reliable and it's really great. If you're wondering what happens if you can't interact with the screen, if it's broken, if it's smashed, I did just let it sit and send, and it did work. So, I think holding it and pointing it is optimal. If you can't do that, it'll work. And again, there was that crash in Angeles National Forest. I don't think the people were responsive. I know the car went 300 feet off the side of a cliff. The car crash collision got triggered. It sent an emergency beacon. I don't think they were sitting in there going like this with the phone inside of like a flipped car. So it does work. It is great. And I'm really surprised by that. All right, so the message is up on the satellite. From there, it gets sent down to a ground station back on Earth and relayed to a PSAP, a public safety answering center, essentially a 911 call center. I was surprised to hear there's over 3,000 of them here in Canada and the US alone. So pretty amazing. Some of them are set up to receive these text messages automatically, so it'll just go right through. Others that are not will be handled by Apple's emergency response center. So essentially a group of about 300 people right now that will take the text message and relay that to a 911 call center. And then from there, a two-way conversation is initiated. So the 911 or emergency responders will be able to text you back on your phone and give you information, find out more information about your situation, and it'll just happen essentially the way an inReach does. It's a two-way text satellite communication situation. Your emergency contacts cannot contact you. On an inReach, they can text you back and forth. Might not be the best thing in terms of burning your battery down, but they can do that. Not on the Apple. They will get a copy of what's going on, so they'll be able to follow in real time and see what's developing on your emergency situation, but they won't be able to text you directly. So just so you know. And then the emergency goes on until the emergency is canceled or, until somebody comes and gets you. So very, very powerful. And, I think obviously a great thing to be bundled on an iPhone. So in addition to the Emergency SOS, you can also use the satellite connectivity to share your location using the Find My app on iOS. Now, before you do this, what you should do when you're in cellular reception and when you're at home or whatever, is you need to actually invite people to share your location with. You need to essentially send them an invitation and say, Chris wants to share his location with you. They have to accept it. And that's how it works. You can't add new people when you're out of cell phone range, when you're in the backcountry sharing a location. People have to be part of your Find My network beforehand. There's a lot of documentation on that online. It's pretty simple to set up, but everyone has to be in that network in order for this to happen. You can also can't share your location via satellite if you're in cell phone range. So if you're in cell phone range, it'll just use the normal functionality of sharing location via cell phone to put your little icon on a map. But when you're out of cell phone range, you'll notice that the option to send or share your location via satellite becomes enabled, and you can click on this, and essentially what kicks in is the same process that worked with Emergency SOS. You'll have to wait for a satellite if it's not overhead. You'll point the phone at the satellite, you'll get the little progress bar, and it will share your notification with whoever's in your Find My network. Now, they won't get a notification that you've shared via satellite. They have to manually go in and see where you are, and that's how it works. So on an inReach, when you do it, you basically send a text message or an email, and then the person, if they have text messages and emails notifications on, they will get a notification that you shared your location or shared some sort of message. On this, it doesn't work like that. It's only your location. There's no message involved. There's no two-way texting with your contacts, only two-way texting with Emergency SOS. But I applaud Apple for including this in the Find My location thing. If you're like a thru hiker, you could just say, I'm going to do this every day at 5 o'clock, and your family can go on to Find My at 6 o'clock and see where you are. So cool feature. And I'd expect as Apple develops the satellite capability that this will be one of the paid features that comes in. You'll be able to do two-way texting with non-emergency contacts. You'll be able to do regular location check-ins. That's all going to be probably coming once they start charging for this. I'll talk about that in a second. But for right now, you can share for free, and it's pretty cool. So you've got an iPhone 14, you can do all this cool stuff. I like it. Here are the caveats. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Caveats are you can use this for 2 years for free after you activated the phone. After that, Apple will maybe charge. They didn't say what they're going to do, whether they charge or they not charge, but it's free for 2 years, so that's a pretty cool thing. I'd imagine what they're going to do is they're going to charge for extra services, and they're going to introduce services like the inReach has. They're going to introduce location sharing, maybe weather reports, non-emergency texting via satellite. I'd imagine that they would charge for those things. It's hard to see them offering free SOS on this device for 2 years, and then like 2 years in one day, you're in the middle of the backcountry and you have to call for help, and you get a little message saying, sorry, you need to pay for this now. I'd imagine the SOS will always be there, but who knows? I don't know. We'll see. So that's one of the caveats. The other caveat is it's not available worldwide. If you have an inReach, inReach is available worldwide. I've had people bring this to Antarctica and go on hikes in Antarctica and email me pictures of location check-ins from Antarctica. So it works everywhere. It works in the middle of the ocean if you're like a sailor or boating. It works everywhere. This only works in a few places. Right now, it works in Canada and the US. It works in some of the Central European countries. I'd imagine that Apple has plans to roll it out to more countries. What I heard is that it's not a technical limitation in terms of coverage. It's more of a workflow problem, setting up the emergency call centers and the relay centers and getting people to speak the native languages and interfacing with all of the different systems they have for handling emergencies worldwide. So that's all in progress. I'd imagine we'll see more countries coming online as time goes on. And if you are outside of the reported distances or reported coverage areas, I would still try to use it. I know that for the US and Canada, the upper limit, they said, is 62 degrees north, which is somewhere around Anchorage, but somebody already triggered an emergency SOS. I think it's 67 or 69 degrees north outside of that area, and it worked. So if for some reason you are not in a area where this is supposed to work, I would just try it anyway. Same thing, if you buy it in the US and you are in Canada, you can use it there for satellite. You can use it essentially in any of the countries that support the satellite communications for this, regardless of whether you purchased it in that country or not, or whether your carrier is in that country or not. So, I like it. We'll see what happens with the footprint. I hope that Apple at some point will offer this worldwide and will interface with different coast guards and stuff so you can use it in the ocean. I think that's probably what they'd have to do to be competitive with inReach and Iridium, but we'll see what happens. Also worth mentioning now is a question I get asked all the time, and it's about frivolous usage of the Emergency SOS feature. And I got asked this when inReach first came out and when PLBs came out, and basically the question or the concern is, now that anyone can call 911 from anywhere, won't we get people, going on hikes and just getting tired and calling 911, or just, having a stomach ache and calling it frivolously and putting other people's lives in danger. And it's a good question. I actually talk to search and rescue people about this all the time. I did it a lot with the inReach. And generally the consensus with search and rescue is they're there to help people and save people. And they'd much rather get a message from a device and be able to communicate, back and forth on text message to get an idea of what the situation is, where a person is, and, understand what they're getting into before they go out there, rather than not. So the alternative is people don't have an iPhone 14, they go out hiking and they get stuck and they're just missing, right? If you have a loved one ever do that, go out for a hike and they don't come back, you don't have to wait 24 hours to call 911. Just so you know, you can call the sheriff's department whenever. The sooner you get the information, the better. The sooner they get the information, the better. There's sort of a window within 24 hours that's a sweet spot to rescue somebody. If you are a hiker, you should always share your location, share your plans with your family, and give them a cutoff time to say, if I'm not back by 8 o'clock tonight, call the sheriff. I did the hike to Mount Baldy on, via the Notch or whatever it might be. You should always do that. The more information that search and rescue have, the better. I do think people will use this frivolously. I think people use 911 probably frivolously too. That's just how it is. But overall, being able to call for distress in the backcountry is going to be a good thing. It's going to save lives. It's already saved lives. And inReach already has, I think they just got up to 10,000 lives saved with inReach. So overall, these are good things that help people, despite the fact that maybe a few people will use them frivolously. All right, so you have a good idea of how this all works. Well, how does this compare to this? And when I say this is an inReach Mini 2. This is really applicable for all of the Garmin inReach products, and similar with the Zoleo product. I have reviews for all of those on my website for lots of different satellite communicators. So check out HikingGuy.com if you want to learn more about these types of things. But how is it different? The main thing for me is that the inReach, and this is a Mini 2, but this goes for all the inReach models. These are purpose-built devices for the outdoors. They're waterproof, they're dust-proof. You can drop them, you can sit on them, get them wet, smash them. There are buttons on them that have tactile feedback, so you can feel when it clicks in. You can use them in the rain and the snow with gloves on. It's basically built for the outdoors, or satellite communications with the outdoors, whereas the phone is built for everyday use. Even though the 14 is a very rugged device, I've dropped this, it's been okay, but still, you can crack the glass. The battery on the iPhone is designed to last about a day or so. The battery on the inReach is designed to last a number of days. So if you want the best tool for the job in terms of the form factor and being in the outdoors, the inReach is the move. The other big thing, which I mentioned a little bit before, is that the inReach works all over the world, 100% coverage on the globe. There are over 70 Iridium satellites that supports the inReach system, where there's only 26 on the Globalstar with this. Not that that necessarily means anything. The coverage could be different, but still, this works around the world. There's been over 10,000 rescues with the inReach. It's tried, it's true. You don't have to worry about where you are in terms of coverage. You can just use it wherever. You can buy it in the United States. You can go, to Africa, South America, to Asia, whatever, and use it. There's only a few places in the world where this is illegal, places like Afghanistan, Syria, probably places you don't want to go anyway, but generally it just works. Similarly, there's the basically the emergency response system on this. It's run by a center called the IERCC. It used to be called GEOS. Garmin bought it, the International Emergency Response Center. I don't know, I'll put it underneath me here, but it's essentially a organization set up to handle emergencies anywhere in the world. And like I said, they've got over 10,000 just inReach alone rescues under their belt. It works all over. You're going to talk to people who are used to emergencies in the backcountry, can give you advice like what to do in case of a fire, can interface with the appropriate land manager, whether it's a national park, a forest service, maybe even a military jurisdiction. I've seen all of those actually happen with inReach, and it just works. So I think that's a little more robust. It'll be interesting to see how the 911 call centers handle new backcountry emergencies. It looks like the ones that have happened so far have been okay. And there's lots of cases already where people call 911 and say, my husband, my son, my daughter, whatever is missing, and they handle the emergency. So It does work, but I know that the IERCC is definitely a robust response system. And then let's talk about all of the non-emergency features that inReach offers, right? The big one is the non-emergency texting. So essentially you buy a plan, I'll talk about the plans in a second, but you buy a plan for your inReach and you can just send text. You can send preset text or non-preset text. I talk about that in my reviews for these devices. Check those out if you want to learn more. But very powerful because you don't always have an emergency situation in the backcountry, right? I use this plenty of times just to tell my wife that I'm running late and that she shouldn't call the sheriff's department that I'm, something's wrong because I'm not back when I said I'm going to be back. I'm able to do those things with the inReach. I'm also able to get a weather report via text message, which helps when you're out camping or on extended trips in the backcountry. You can also share your location. So you can do automatic location sharing, whereas it's all manual on the phone. On this, you can do it automatically, and there might be a charge, there might not be a charge depending on your plan. But if you do set it, it will send your location to a map online that you can protect with a password, or you can share to the world, or you can just share with a few people. But they can click on a link and look at where you've been on a map, where you are on a map, and they can also see a breadcrumb trail of where you've been on a map. So if you are maybe like a PCT hiker, you can share your exact trail, or kind of your exact trail, with your family and friends or whoever you might want to online using an inReach. You pay for it, but you can do it. The inReach units also come with some form of navigation with them, and some like a unit like the 66i GPS map has mapping and a full featured navigation set on it. This is more limited on a Mini, but you can navigate with it. So if you are in trouble and you do have to navigate, if maybe the emergency responders are telling you to navigate to a certain point where a helicopter can land or something like that, you can do that all on an inReach device. You can, get apps for your iPhone to navigate. There's definitely very powerful apps to do that. There's a compass app on here. You can do that on here, but you're switching between apps and it's not part of like the normal operating procedure of a phone, whereas it's all rather seamless on all of the inReach devices. So that all sounds great with the inReach. Why not just get an inReach? Well, there are costs involved. Two main things. There's the cost of the device that you have to buy, anywhere from a couple $100 to several $100. And then there's also a subscription that you need to pay for and set up before you go out in the field in order to make this work. There are different levels of subscriptions depending on what you want, and you're basically paying for satellite time. So if you want to send a lot of text messages back and forth, then you will pay for it essentially. But what I find great, or what I really appreciate, is that the most basic plan costs you under $150 for the year, and it offers SOS worldwide and also unlimited preset messages. So you can send as many messages as you want that you are okay, or you're running late, or you're camping somewhere for the night. As long as you set it up beforehand, all those preset messages, unlimited, are free or part of that $150 a year plan. There are activation fees and little hooks in there that get you if you want to upgrade or downgrade or whatever it might be. There are professional plans and personal plans. I'll put links to all of those underneath the video and on the webpage so you can check it all out. But again, $150 I think is pretty reasonable for the basic functionality of the inReach. All right, time for the $100,000 question. Should you get an iPhone 14 or should you get an inReach? Here's what I think. If you are a casual hiker, a fair weather hiker, maybe you go out to hike a couple times a week. If it's raining, if it's snowy, if it's sloppy out, you're not going to go out hiking. Maybe you use tools like AllTrails or Gaia GPS on your phone to navigate. You use your camera on the phone to take pictures, and you're kind of like a iPhone or smartphone hiker. The iPhone 14 makes a lot of sense to upgrade to or to get. Now you'll be able to do all the things that you normally do, and you'll also have the satellite SOS in there, and you get these extra things like the crash detection. This also comes in handy if you're just driving and you drive at a cell phone range, which can happen a lot of different places all over the world. So again, having that on the phone, I think is worth it if you're not going out and stuff that's sloppy. And also if you're like maybe a thru hiker. I know a lot of thru hikers use the phone as sort of a primary device. They use something called Far Out, which used to be called Gut Hook, which is another navigation program. They have the Kindle on there and podcasts and use the phone, and use it for different things. I think upgrading to an iPhone 14 makes a lot of sense because now you also have the satellite communications and you won't necessarily have the need for an inReach device if you're using the phone so extensively anyway. Now, that said, if you want the best tool for the job, if you want the best tool, the most reliable tool for backcountry satellite communications, whether it be SOS or non-SOS communications, and inReach is the move. Just the fact that it's so durable and rugged. I mean, I've used these for years. I've thrashed them. I've never broken one of these. I probably could try to break it, but I've never broken one of these. They always just work. The IERCC is an established, center for handling backcountry communications. It'll work in the middle of the ocean. If my plane lands in the middle of the ocean, I can hit the button on this and do it. I don't have to worry about anything. The nice thing, like I said, under 150 bucks, you can get the basic plan, and with that all just works, and you can send messages to your family. And you have to ask the question, like, what is it worth? What is my life worth? Do I want the best tool for the job when I'm in the outdoors, and it's worth 150 bucks a year plus the device? Maybe. I know not everyone has the luxury to get that, but I think for a lot of people, it's probably worth it, especially if you go out a lot. And also, if you are a fair weather hiker and you go out and, the weather conditions can change, your phone can get smashed, having a rugged device gives you another level of protection out there. Now, if you want another level of protection and you don't want to pay for a subscription, you can buy a device called a PLB, a personal locator beacon. It's another very reliable, rugged device. It's a one-way message that gets sent to as a distress signal. It's not a two-way conversation. But if you have a PLB, you basically buy the hardware, you register it with your country, you put it in your pack and you forget about it. You change the battery every 5 to 10 years, depending on when they tell you to do it. And it's another satellite communicator you can have. If you have an iPhone 14 and a PLB, there's no subscription costs and you have a level of backup there. If you have an iPhone 14 and an inReach like I do, you have, tremendous amount of backup of coverage here. 2 satellite communicators in case I need them. I have an iPhone anyway. I upgraded to the 14 and I have this because I share my location and I like to let my family know that I'm okay or I'm running late. So there's some options there. Overall, I think it's great, and as new devices come out, I'll cover them as well. I know that T-Mobile and also AT&T made an announcement that they're going to offer satellite communications on their phones. When that happens, I will talk about that. That's supposed to happen without any special hardware, just a normal, I think, a 5G connection to the satellite. So that's very exciting as well. I'll cover that. If you want to hear more of this type of thing or learn more about this, just subscribe to the channel. And again, if you liked it, if you can give me a thumbs up, I appreciate it. It'll help other people find this video and hopefully make a good decision about what type of satellite communicator to get. And if you want to know more about the inReach, if you're considering it, I recommend watching my video on the inReach Mini 2. There's a link to that on the screen right here. Check that out. And thanks for your time, guys. Any questions, leave them in the comments, and I'll see you out in the trail.